Well, hello, friends, and welcome into Rates in Barrels. I am Chris Welsh. That is Eno Sarris. There is no DVR. DVR will return soon. When will now be then,
Tomorrow.
Soon. Remember the Spaceballs?
Yeah, right.
When will now be then? Soon. Yes, DVR will be back here very shortly. But today you have Welsh and Eno, and we have actually got a little bit of a pseudo project prospect, if you will, on this Monday edition. If we're going to be focusing on a lot of the latest news and stuff like that, well, there's a ton of prospect stuff going on. There's debuts, there's re-debuts, there's call-ups, and we're going to be discussing all of that here shortly. I do want to remind everybody, if you guys want to make sure you have access to everything The Athletic has to offer, like all of Eno's great articles and more, go to theathletic.com/rates and barrels. You can sign up today. Couple bucks will get you locked in. You can download the app and you will be raring to go. So why would you not go do that? Probably the most, it's hilariously enough, the most anticipated call up, simply because we have been waiting and waiting and waiting. I've been a pretty big, loud, screamer of this guy for like 2 months, because I thought he was going to be one of the first call ups in all of the crazy rookie mess. So I think that's what's made it so intense. It's finally happening. Christian Encarnacion-Strand with the Reds officially called up. So kind of post All-Star break, all the things are happening. Lots of prospects we'll probably talk about tomorrow moving up levels. And then you're also getting, over the weekend, we had the A's guys come up, but CES Christian Encarnacion-Strand officially being called up. And there are a billion questions we're going to be going through as far as where does he play? How does that affect the team? I know everyone's going to want to know that, but Strand, 20 homers in AAA. He did it in 67 games, 65 runs and 62 RBI in 67 games. He hit 331, had an under 22% K percentage and a double-digit walk percentage. Those are all the things that he did while in AAA. So it's highly anticipated. So, what are your thoughts on getting Strand up here? And do you think he's going to be able to? I think there's a little bit of extra hype that's been added to him that's going to always be hard to live up with some of these prospects. But what's your anticipation of what we're going to see out of Strand coming up here in his debut?
I think one thing that's interesting is that there is a flaw here, I think. And I wanted to ask you about this in terms of how many at-bats of his you've watched. Because Keith Law mentioned this in his write-up on the Athletic of the news. I don't know where he got this number, but he said he had like a 40% chase rate. So I'm wondering if that was something you noticed, that he really expands his zone.
Yeah, that's been a pretty well-known thing where people dismiss the strikeout rate because of the chase rate. That's been something that's followed him. I mean, this is a big power
so they think
swinger.
He's strike out on the upper end of that.
Most people, especially that have some of those numbers, that can look at I don't have the chase rate number in front of me, that can look at that, go, well, I don't think there is a big path where he's not going to be close to a 30% strikeout guy. Though the only time he's ever struck out above 25% was his very first year in Minnesota at A-ball, where he was a 28.3% guy. Right. He's also kind of improved. The thing I've been encouraged about is he's improved the walk rate, which he did this year. First time in double digits at 10%. The lowest of his strikeout rate at 21%. And maybe if you want to argue it, I tend to be hyper-focused on AA numbers a lot, because I think there's a huge transitional change from high A to AA. And in AA, it wasn't the best. It was actually his lowest walk percentage and a 25% K percentage, but that's still not the worst on the planet. So I think the chase rate is going to equate to quality of contact with him, and people assuming there's going to be a much bigger strikeouts, which I would say it's definitely a possibility, but I think that's maybe dismissing if the decisions, which have obviously been showing in AAA, if that pitch recognition and those decisions are on par, he's going to make huge, huge quality of contact. So you're saying the chase rate is the flaw that you are really worried about?
Well, there's an interesting parallel here to the A's prospects that came up, Zach Geloff and Tyler Soderstrom, and Christian Encarnacion-Strand. They all have swing strike rates around 15%. And I did a quick pull up of a leaderboard and found that the average strikeout rate for a person with a 15% or higher swinging strike rate is 28%. So I do tend to think that all three of these guys will strike out 27, 28% of the time at least. With some particulars, we can talk about the A's guys later, but in Strand's case, I do kind of think he's going to strike out around 28% of the time when you combine those swing strike rates with this knowledge of his chase rate. If you want to get some comparables, there are 13 players with a higher than 40% chase rate that are qualified for the batting title. Javier Baez is the patron saint of chase rate, and Salvador Perez as well. But Eddie Rosario has had a pretty long career without that bad of a strikeout rate, with that same sort of chase rate. Mauricio Dubon is this kind of player. Ahmed Rosario, Josh Naylor, Luis Robert, Ezekiel Tovar, Nick Castellanos, Andres Jimenez, Tyra Estrada, CJ Abrams, and Bo Bichette. These players are all pretty good. And they're not all bad strikeout rates. I would say that they don't have good walk rates, so the average OBP on this list is probably below 300, just eyeballing it. And that does have meaning for how much they're going to play. Like half of these players are below league average in terms of WRC plus, right? And if Javier Baez didn't have a great glove, he wouldn't be playing anymore. So, a lot of these players play premium positions or have a great hit tool, So Josh Naylor does not play a premium position, but he strikes out 16% of the time because he's a great hit tool.
Yeah.
He chases, but he can hit it. I wouldn't sign Josh Naylor to that free agent deal if he wants, 6, 7, 8 years after he leaves Cleveland. You know what I mean? It's a little bit too much like a Pablo Sandoval type package, and so I think chase rate is meaningful. It doesn't mean that Christian Encarnacion-Strand is A, going to strike out a lot by itself, or B, that he's going to be bad in the short run. As much as I love chase rate, he could still be Christian Encarnacion-Strand could still be really good when he hits the ground with a bad chase rate.
Yeah,
there are other players on this list that are good players.
The thing that's interesting is I do think there's unfair expectations just in general with rookies. A rookie comes up this year and everyone's like, oh my God, drop on the fab, get the player. Should I start him over? And it's like immediate. Everybody assumes every rookie that comes up is an immediate 12 team starting.
Should I drop
first
Josh
or...
Naylor for Christian Encarnacion-Strand? You're like, no.
and you should be a little timid about it. And CES has been so built up that I do think if and I think there's a strikeout potential there. I really do. I thought the same thing with Ellie De La Cruz. Maybe ballpark factors in Cincinnati help a little bit. An interesting note on those three players that with the two A's guys, Geloff and Soderstrom and Strand, is there are a lot of similarities, not just in the whiff rate. They all showed up pretty decently in the hard hit strength on RotoWire. If you look at the batted ball data, they're all over 35%. Geloff being, I think, the most. I think Soderstrom was 35. Strand was around 36, and Soderstrom and Geloff was 39.
39, and 39 gives him, I think, sort of eyeballing it because RotoWire doesn't have the numbers on it, but sort of eyeballing it, I would guess sort of top 25, top 30 in the minors.
Yeah, so they all hit the ball really hard. But here's the difference.
Plate appearances, yeah.
Here's your difference when you're looking at it. Strand, of these guys, exponentially lower ground ball rate than either one of them. Both of those guys much higher ground ball rates. Strand had a 35%, 36 around up, 36% ground ball rate in AAA. In fact, has never had a 40% or higher ground ball percentage in the minor leagues ever. Line drive rate up, has a harder pull rate, a better pull rate than either one of these players. Soderstrom's was under 40. Geloff is around 42, 47% pull rate. So pulling the ball while also not getting it on the ground. And then what's the other thing?
He's a definite pull fly ball guy. I mean, he's a product of Christian Encarnacion-Strand is like a wet dream for a lot of hitting coaches in terms of hits the ball hard, gets the ball out in front, pulls the ball. but it also has some ramifications for strikeout rate.
Yeah, I hope they refer to him as that too. I hope that's actually, I hope that's the nickname. But the other thing is like, there's the worry, and you can bunch them all together. The thing that I go back and side on with is also look at the results. The guy has hit under 300 at one stop in the minors his entire way. And it was 296. He's hitting 331 this year. He's improved the walk percentage. The power numbers are there.
I'm getting off of this a little bit. What? Like a more powerful Nick Castellanos.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, he's like a little bit of a bigger guy, but yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
I'm saying statistically, because Nick Castellanos was on my chase rate list, and Castellanos has always had better strikeout rates than you'd expect given his plate skills. Like, he chases everything, he misses a lot, and yet he, still manages to strike out less than 30% of the time.
And what also does he have? Streaks. He's got these bad, and I think that could be Strand. You could have a bad month where everyone's like, do we cut him? Do we get rid of him? And then all of a sudden he's one of the best players. I think that's in Strand's game. And I think that's something that maybe you could take to him, is understanding there might be some streaky play in here because there is swing and miss. He does have a higher whiff rate. When he's off, he's off.
He hits about running, right? Yeah.
But when he does, the ground ball rates in his favor, line drive, like fly ball, pull. Exactly. That's the type, and that's what you should get yourself in for when you're thinking about him. So obviously a bigger bet that, Soderstrom had much worse ground ball rates and stuff like that. So what I'm getting at is, yes, the whiff rate is telling a bigger story than the K rate, but also the quality of contact, I think, isn't being given enough credit because of that. And there's a better quality of contact.
And Gelof, there is a little bit of a whiff of ground ball risk. A little bit more with Soderstrom than Gelof, I think.
Now the other big question,
like a guy who's trying to lift it, but
and I think that happened from the AFL, by the way. That was an AFL change. You started seeing him really try to like launch angle the ball.
It's impossibly small results, but we do have some results for Gelof and Soderstrom, and you might be tempted to say, well, they didn't strike out that much in their debuts. They did whiff a lot, 18% for Gelof and 17% whiff rate for Soderstrom. So I actually expect both of those guys to strike out 30% of the time.
So the Ks are coming. So here's the other big question with Strand, and this is the one that I've seen a whole bunch of, is where does he play and how does this shake out? Because I've had some other questions that have been underlined with it. What about Spencer Steer? What about Nick Senzel? They have a glut of riches. So let's talk about this. How do you think this shakes out? And I think some of this has already been spelled out to us over on The Athletic of how are these guys going to mix and match and work.
Yeah, the quote from Christian C. Trent Rosecrans about Christian Encarnacion-Strand. Whew.
Say that one more time.
Yeah. With the Reds, CES will likely play both corner infield spots and DH. He'll play third when Jonathan India is the team's DH, with Dela Cruz at shortstop and McLean at second. And he'll play first when Votto is the DH, and De La Cruz plays third, and McLean plays second. You may have noticed there is not one mention of a really good player that used to play on the infield.
Spencer Steer. Where are you? Where in the world is Spencer Steer?
He's an outfielder now. So there is a bit of a logjam. I think we decided that there's one clear loser. Nick Senzel is on the short side of the stick here. He is a right-hander with an 83 WRC plus that was filling in ably, but I think there's little reason to play Senzel except in a platoon with Benson. Now that's fine. Will Benson and Nick Senzel would be a pretty good platoon, I think. Benson is awful against left-handers so far, and he hasn't even been playing them much, so you just put in Benson and Senzel. That's a corner outfield spot. Nice. You got a corner outfield spot. Now you have Steer, Friedel, and Fraley for 2 spots. So Senzel's a big loser, and Steer, Friedel, and Fraley are all little losers.
Little tiny loser. Well, and that's like, the theory. And
they
that's
lose a little bit,
That's the hard thing about this.
Little losers.
Little baby losers. Look at these little baby losers. the goofy thing is when I immediately saw this, because Roster Resources confirmed they have Spencer Steer as a starting left fielder, and they have Benson in right. Take that for whatever it is, by the way, and Friedel in center, and then Fraley as a DH. But we know that's not going to happen based on what we've just heard. The DH for this team looks like it is going to be Votto and Jonathan India moving forward.
And Friedel and Fraley are lefties. I don't think Steer is sliding into like a righty platoon with one of them.
I don't think, see, they have so many lefties and they're kind of like the Diamondback situation. But you look at that, I have a hard time believing that Friedel and Fraley move into big platoons. So this is why when I stared at this, I immediately assumed Fraley and Friedel play every day. Steer is a theoretical everyday guy, and Benson moves around. And then that leaves Nick Senzel.
So Benson and Senzel are both bench pieces. Your outfield is Friedel, Fraley, Steer.
I think so. With Benson maybe getting
the big loser.
Yeah, maybe getting it bats moving around. Now, I say all of that, and this might, and here's the worst case, and this is what you were building up. This might just be a 5-piece mix and match where everybody could lose a little bit. There might not be
They're
one
all
guy
tiny
that is
little losers.
It's a group of baby losers. Yeah, it's this seven. Yeah, the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs of losers.
That's what I mean. Honestly, it's what good teams do, and it frustrates us as fantasy players, right? Like good teams do this. They keep their guys fresh. They have people play a lot of different positions, so that and some of it is loss prevention, and in terms of like if I get to the playoffs and Friedel gets hurt and I didn't play anybody else in center, then I'm in the playoffs and I'm starting somebody in center for the first time. What you do instead is you start everyone everywhere, and if someone gets hurt, you're like, well, India's hurt, but McLean's been playing second all year, so as a part-time, so now he's just the second baseman. You know what I mean?
And you end up screaming depth. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I assume Nick Senzel is the biggest guy on the outs of anybody here. I have a hard time believing with what Steer did this year that you're taking him out of the lineup on a semi-regular basis. Same thing with Fraley and Friedel. I think Benson would be better suited to be, like you said, the platoon against righty. Yeah, lefty off the bench. And that, to me, maybe says Nick Senzel is a trade piece for a team that might want to acquire other spots. He's still a little bit controllable. He could play third. He can play the outfield. Maybe he doesn't get a haul, but maybe he's a part of something bigger, except the problem could be they may scream depth and if someone got injured, but you've got multiple guys that could play third, multiple guys that could play outfield. I just don't know if that's the case.
Fraley can play an okay center.
Yeah. Friedel can play center. Benson can play center. Steer's probably the only one that's not. You want to talk about the versatility of Senzel at third? You got Steer. You've got Encarnacion-Strand. You've got Ellie.
I think you have three people that can play every position without Senzel.
Yeah. So I think Senzel could be a trade option. You and I were.
And if anybody yelling at the radio right now, if you're listening to us on a radio, on an old timey radio, if you're yelling at the radio, I don't think either of us is suggesting that Senzel would get a haul. However, this team would love a reliever. And
I think so.
We built a bit of a thing here, a bit of a trade. One idea was to the Rockies for Daniel Bard or something.
Yeah, maybe Pierce Johnson, Bard. I don't know. Either one of those guys have been all right. Probably more helpful.
Bard. And then you had maybe a slight upgrade from that was a Royals trade.
Yeah, the Royals for Scott Barlow. I mean, Barlow we know is on the market. I do think a lot of teams are going to be aggressive about it, but maybe the Reds can offer Senzel and another minor league piece to get what would be then a big 1-2 punch of Diaz and Barlow, and that might be what this team needs, especially because you got a lot of injury. I mean, they might prioritize starters, but because of the issues they've had with starters, you've got to have a more lockdown bullpen if you're going to have these young pitchers like Abbott and Williamson pitching deep into games and you're contending. It's more important than anything else to have a more solid bullpen. So that's why I think
and also,
being aggressive
I don't think
with Barlow.
Senzel is not necessarily moving the needle much for a starter unless you're talking about like a rental who's not a playoff starter.
Yeah.
Right.
And Senzel could be seen for the Royals as a starter.
Yeah, right. But at 83 WRC plus and all those injuries, I don't think I think it makes sense. He could be in a reliever trade. I think that
Yeah.
could make sense.
Yeah. So
But yeah, in terms of a starter, I think they should actually think more about shopping at the top of the market than the back of the market. Because, somebody like Giolito or Cease would just be so huge for this team.
Well,
You
and they
know what I
have the
mean?
pieces. They have the minor league pieces to do it if they wanted to. I mean, they've got a glut of lower level, really solid players, and they acquired Edwin Arroyo, Carlos Jorge, Cam Collier, who they just drafted. Some of those guys off to slower starts that they might be able to justify, and they've got some pitchers in Connor Phillips that looks really good. Joe Boyle out there. I'm forgetting Chase Petty. They have got the
Yeah.
minor league pieces to be
Boyle
aggressive
has
if they want to.
awful walk rates, and I just know Kyle Bodie actually mentioned on Twitter that he has really, really good stuff plus numbers. Boyle does, and so they may want to keep him. He may still be a reliever, but they may even just start using him as a reliever this year because of the timeline is so aggressive. You know what I mean?
But also could be why a team is aggressive in trying to target a guy like him if he pops up
Exactly.
on their
Yeah.
stuff plus, and why you might
So
see him
yeah.
involved.
I mean, I think he's a name to consider this year, either as a major league reliever or as a big part of the trade piece for sure.
Yeah, I think the to put a finality on this is that there's a game plan for Strand to play every day, and I think that's been the big question. The other, I think, big question has been how does this affect Steer? And I think we've kind of laid this out that I do think Steer, as currently one of only 2 righties in a 5 outfield rotation, there's a decent chance he's going to be able to stick around in some capacity to continue to play. His versatility is good. That I think these are both pluses. Strand, we've laid it out that, we know where he's going to play. You'll get the position eligibility. I think this is a good sign, and watch for them to make moves because they got a lot to be able to send out, whether it's minor league or even major league, and guys like Benson and Senzel if they decided to. The other big debut is a re-debut, and Grayson Rodriguez is going to be going today as we're recording this. He's back up with the team, back up with the majors. A lot of people were kind of anticipating, cautiously optimistic that he was going to be able to come back up, and hopefully for good. I pulled up his last start, and I think we maybe talked about this previously. I'm always interested in looking at the minor league starts like we did with Taj Bradley in the beginning of the year to see what have they been working on, what have they been changing.
How are you getting these pitch percentages?
I went in. This was our lovely baseball savant. And going in, and you can pull up AAA numbers, and you can pull up the game. So I went into the game log.
Search?
A very complicated. You got to go to game feed, and then you've got to go to the date, and then you got to change MLB to MILB, and then you can get these. And what that ended up doing is I was able to pull up his last start. Now Grayson only went 3, just FYI, but on 7-9, we saw Grayson Rodriguez 2 primary pitches. The cutter gone. The cutter essentially gone, which has been a big problem. He threw his fastball 45% of the time with a 30% swing and miss.
So
Changeup.
was he like fastball changeup against lefties and fastball breaking ball against fastball curveball against righties?
And see, that's what I didn't see. You probably nailed it. I think he threw 3 total cutters. It was 38% changeup, which he had a pitch. 46% swing and miss. So overall, he had 31 swing and miss, 30 CSW. His velo was up and the cutter was out. The walks were still a little bit of a problem. So talk to us about how you're viewing and anticipating Grayson Rodriguez back up, knowing that the cutter is kind of gone. Not quite a 2-pitch pitcher, but a pretty primary 2-pitch pitcher. And like you said, probably going to just take a different outlet versus, maybe versus like righties.
Yeah, I think this is a decent time to acquire him. I still am excited about his future, and I don't know. It would have been better to acquire him like a week ago.
Yeah,
yeah. Now even his owner is probably excited that that he's got him back on his team. But
though, let me throw this to you though, Dodgers. I mean, this is a little bit dangerous because we're doing this, and hopefully this episode will be up right as it goes. But you guys can kind of like wrap this around your head. This is a pretty rough matchup.
He could get hurt today. Yeah, he could be a bad matchup. I was looking at, not to jump ahead, but like, I may not be a high man on Quinn Priester, who's coming up today and pitching today, but he gets the Guardians in Pittsburgh, so sometimes that first matchup is a big deal. And so yeah, this one is not a great matchup for Grayson, but I would like to see, if I see a nice amount of strikeouts and three or fewer walks. I would love it to be just like 2 walks, and then yeah, he gives up a homer or two, and he still gives up 4 earned runs or something, or 5 earned runs. I'd still think that he's someone to acquire, and in fact, that might be a great time to acquire him.
Was there, I don't know if you had it, and I'm telling you on the spot, was there any recent Stuff Plus numbers on his last couple starts? Because he's had obviously a couple starts in the minors. Just curious at like how it's held up in general, because I do think there's a possibility, especially with if he has found a new comfortable spot in how he's pitching, and maybe the cutter was inducing a lot more balls. There's also this thing out on Twitter someone shared about how no catcher had more out of the zone strike calls than Adley Rutschman. So you go and look at like him, his comfortability level with Adley. Adley gets more called strikes that shouldn't be. And then maybe he's taking off a pitch that was inducing the most balls, that if he is going to be primary fastball changeup, and if the stuff is looking as good as ever, like I said, the velo numbers were up across the board in the minors, that it's not out of the realm of possibility that he actually slices and dices for a bit against the Dodgers.
Yeah, it's not. My last update I'm looking at here is from late June, so I don't have the last couple of starts on here, and I will have that for you tomorrow from Project Prospect. But
perfect, yeah, we'll be able to break all that down for Project Prospect.
We'll have to do a check back in and see. I would love to just see what his process is without the cutter. I'd love to see how he attacks lefties. I'd love to see where he's throwing the four seam and how much control he has over it. So
where do you?
I'm watching.
Okay, I'm going to actually jump ahead a little bit on the sheet because I had something a little bit later. And the only reason I did it was because I was looking at some 30-day markers on some players. And I was looking at K- walk percentage. Last 30 days. And 2 guys popped up, 2 rookies. They're actually right next to each other. And I was going to kind of pit these guys up. Where did they go? Who they were was Andrew Abbott and Bryan Woo. Those 2 just specifically have just been really good. Obviously, you guys know that, but they've just been really good even over in some of the short term here. And let me see if I can find where the hell they are, which I'm not seeing, of course. But my question would be Grayson, Abbott, Woo. How do you rank those?
I mean, this is going to infuriate some people, but
oh, let's go.
Still Grayson, Woo, Abbott.
So Abbott being so that's why, yeah, the Reds fans are, well, we just built the Reds fans up a whole bunch, and now you're going to bring them back down. Okay, I finally found it, by the way. So Abbott, by the way, a 27.6% K- walk percentage, which over the last 30 days of qualified pitchers, that is the 8th best of all. So yeah, you are going to make them mad. That is the 8th best K- walk percentage of all qualified pitchers.
I just don't get it. The fastball is exactly average in every way, and that is not usually a good thing.
And I don't know why I can't find Woo anymore. I had him on here, but and Abbott, by the way, has the 10th best qualified K percentage over the last 30 days of 33.6. So there was a reason I put them together. So you said Grayson, Woo, Abbott.
Yeah, hold on.
Now I'm curious
Andrew
to throw
Abbott, 79.7 fastball stuff plus. This is a new model, a new retrain of the model that I'm looking at some new numbers here, and we put in platoon splits. So, he is a lefty, and so lefties in the past, the model hasn't really loved them. and that's unfair because that doesn't make sense. So we put in platoon splits, and Andrew Abbott has a sub 80 stuff plus on the fastball, and overall he has a 90 stuff plus.
By the way, I found out why I couldn't find him because of qualified. So I changed my qualifications. Woo in that same 30 days. So Abbott had a 33.6% K percentage, only a 6% walk percentage over the last 30. Woo, 26.1% K percentage, 8% walk percentage, which left him with an 18.2 K minus walk percentage. So I don't know. I mean, I know like the thesis here for you is like Abbott's getting away with stuff.
I've seen, I don't know why, but I've seen people just take what is an average fastball middle from Andrew Abbott. And I know, like, yeah, maybe deception or something, but I don't see any deception.
I was just about to say, is it like release point or?
When I watch it, it looks like a fairly normal release. I don't see anything that stands out about it. So Woo, I think is really exciting because he has two really good fastballs, and he's hiding the fact that he's throwing two sliders. And so you may look at him and be like, oh, it's just fastball slider. It's more like two really distinct different fastballs that are both really good, and two really distinct breaking balls that I think are pretty good. Like I think the sweeper is very good, and I think the gyro slider is decent. So I think he has weapons against both sides. Good velo, really interesting release point. I'm all in for Woo.
Yeah, looking back on Abbott, interesting thing.
I could maybe push Woo ahead of Grayson, honestly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because Grayson is he's struggling to put it together.
If he's a primary 2-pitch pitcher too, maybe you don't love that.
Yeah, I mean, the curveball for some reason has gone up and down and really fluctuated in my stuff plus numbers in the minors. So if Grayson Rodriguez is actually a fastball changeup guy, that's not my favorite thing in today's. I love watching changeups, but betting on changeup guys is difficult and not something I would like to do a lot of.
Looking at Abbott too, it's got to be about like what's so weird to what you're saying is why the fastball's not happening is maybe it's about looking for the other pitches, but you would also think there's got to be a point where you sit on it, because I'm looking here, 10% usage plus, actually 15% usage plus between changeup, sweeper, and curveball. 18, 16, 15 curve, sweeper, changeup usage.
Still a lot of fastballs. 50% fastballs is a lot in today's game.
Yeah, well, and look how like effective the much higher whiff rates on the curve, sweeper, and changeup particularly has a 41.5% whiff rate. They hit the curve hard. They're bad EVs against the sweeper and changeup. 83 average EV against a sweeper, 86 against a changeup. So they're just not able to do it. So it's kind of a like, is the pitch mix causing the fastball to play up? But then also, do guys not have a read on where he's throwing any of these? So the fastball is becoming more effective, because you would think, okay, I'm going to sit off of breaking stuff more and I'm going to try to pound this fastball. But guys, I don't think, if based on what you're saying, maybe they just don't know when that fastball is truly coming and they don't have a good read on it. But he does have about a full ERA expected above his current 2.46 ERA, a 3.61 expected.
And then there's the projections, which run from 4.17, the steamer is the high man, to a 5 ERA from the bat. And I will point out that a 61% fly ball rate in Cincinnati seems like a bad idea.
Yeah.
So, and then the last thing is just, it's Cincinnati. Like Baltimore doesn't play like that. Seattle is I think right now the best pitcher park in the league, in 1 year park factors. So, yeah, I'm going to push Woo over Rodriguez. I'm going to go Woo, Rodriguez, Abbott.
It'd be an interesting poll to have out there of like, who would people pick? I think it would look like Grayson, Abbott, Woo. I think Grayson would still take at the top, but
I don't know. I think recency bias is strong. I think Grayson would be last.
Really? You think so? I might have to tell DVR
to go Abbott, Woo, Grayson.
DVR likes to put out those fun polls. Maybe I'll have him do that, because I don't think Grayson, well, it would be screwed up because of this start. Like he's top of mind. If he gets lit up by the Dodgers,
But if
he's
we
going to
can
be at the
get this out,
bottom.
maybe when we share it on Rates and Barrels, we
I'll put a
Rates and
poll out
Barrels
under it.
Twitter. Yeah, we'll put it out.
Yeah, I'll see if I can put a poll under that. So that's interesting. You kind of briefly touched on it. Let's talk about the debut, Quinn Priester. The Pirates making it's so funny. These teams doing multiple prospects here. I've talked so much about how the back half of the season is the new prospect manipulation, but I've also said like there's going to be these teams that just know these guys are coming up and they can't sit them the whole year. This makes the most sense. The guys that are fringy, I think like once you get like a month in, they're just going to wait till September. And Quinn Priester and Andrew Rodriguez both kind of were those players that, you know, they weren't going to have them sit anymore. You're not really manipulating them for next year. Let's talk about Quinn Priester. I pulled up his last start in the minors, and it's pretty fascinating. I'm also not a big Quinn Priester guy. He was 52% sinker. And check this out. He had 24 swings on those sinkers, 0 swing and misses on it. 0.
He
had
a good start.
You know what? I think it was. Now that I should have actually pulled up the numbers. I was more focused on the stuff. 17% slider, had a 43% swing and miss percentage, 11% four seam, 33% swing and miss, and then he threw his curveball 10% of the time. 0 swing and misses. So his sinker and curveball induced nothing. He ended up with a 23% CSW percentage across the board. And this is kind of how he lives. And he just kind of hits the zone. I don't think the stuff is crazy deceptive. The slider was obviously effective, but they're bringing him up. And I'm just not like insanely encouraged about Quinn Priester. And it didn't sound like you were either.
No, I mean, if it does work out, I would point to it's a Cleveland matchup in Pittsburgh, which favors him, and then B, he does have a little bit of that, mixes it up with okay command, right? But as you mentioned, in his most recent start, 52% sinker, and then also fastballs on four-seam fastballs on top of that. That sounds like he's at 60% fastball.
This was, by the way, that start. This was from the 6th, by the way, because he had one on the 14th where he went 1 inning. I didn't pull that. He went 7 1/3 of an inning, 2 earned runs, 5 hits, no walks, 3 strikeouts. That was the start.
I mean, he's keeping it around the zone. He's trying to get ground balls. I mean, could he do like a Bryce Elder thing? Here's an interesting thing that happened. That when I was looking at sliders, and they're hitting sliders, the league is hitting sliders better than ever. The OPS is the highest it's ever been on sliders. And the other thing that happened out of that piece was that the league is struggling a little bit against sinkers. Sinkers, on the other end, have been a pitch that the league has gone away from. And I think that maybe the hitters aren't seeing the sinker as often, and when they do see sinkers, they're better sinkers. And so there's a chance that Bryce Elder and Quinn Priester come in here with these like decent sinkers and know who they are. They just want to get ground balls, and they manage to be just throwbacks at a time when nobody, no hitters are really preparing for this kind of thing.
Is the correlation though that the league is also throwing more sliders? Because Bryce Elder was a slider first guy,
100%,
and then they're not throwing as many sinkers and they're throwing more sliders is why we're seeing inflated numbers against.
That was my theory in the end. Was the league is training them to be better at sliders by throwing more and more and more and more sliders, and then also they're throwing sliders in hitters counts now, and hitters just do better in hitters counts. So that means sliders in the zone on a count where the hitter is swinging and expecting sliders. Sliders in hitters counts is up to 30%. So if you get a number at 30%, it means a third of the time I get a slider in this hitter count. Then you start having hitters anticipate sliders in hitter counts. And that's going to lead to them hitting them better.
So that also maybe make it why poorish fastballs might be more effective when teams are looking for sliders, a la Abbott. Like there's more players looking for sliders in those counts for guys that throw it, which makes lesser fastballs look a tad bit more effective, especially with command.
Cheese past them, yeah.
Especially when it's commanded.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So
It's
if
a possibility
you have,
there's something there.
you got an idea with like breaking sliders, if a guy is throwing a fastball in what they might assume is a slider count and it touches the edge and they're waiting for the pitch to break, you might have these average fastballs. If a guy can if they can throw the slider and fastball from similar release points, I'm assuming, I don't know if Abbott does that, but if Abbott were to do that and it have a similar look, guys might be waiting for the pitch to break outside of the zone,
I think
which
Abbott
might be
actually
making
has very tight release points.
Oh, really? Okay. So, I mean, maybe that's kind of maybe that's just throwing around like a little bit of a logic
I've
around
not
it.
heard that necessarily about Quinn Priester, but and the command doesn't look to me like standout. He has 2 pitches above 100 location plus in the minors with pretty good sample on all these pitches. So, and the fastball command, 97 on the 4-seam and 98 on the sinker. It's okay. I don't know. He could be. I think to me he's like a 4 or 5, and that's in fantasy terms that's screams streamer.
Big.
So in this case, you'd be like, it's Cleveland at home, not a bad streaming spot.
Yeah, I could see it being effective. We've seen lots of these starting
start
pitchers.
week if he gets it.
I just went away from him, so that's a good question. I don't know. I'll have to look that up in a second. I literally just went away from him on Pittsburgh, but I agree. Like, I'm looking for poor offenses if I'm doing it, and we've seen a lot of these guys be effective in those first starts where teams don't have like really great numbers.
The Pirates go to the Angels over the weekend. That's not as good of a start. I'm not. I'd be nervous of throwing Priester in LA.
And how much big? There's a lot more confidence if he has a good start. People are gonna be like, "Oh, Quinn Priester."
Anaheim right now is hurt, right? So
they still have Ohtani.
They don't have Drury. Yeah, they have Ohtani.
Yeah.
You can still give up 3 runs just to Ohtani.
And I mean, don't forget Trey Cabbage too. Cabbage is up there hitting stuff. So don't forget about
Cabbage. Does
Cabbage
have good Cabbage?
I don't know, but he has really good EVs, really big hard hit numbers. So that's what I know he's got. The other one, just real quick, Andy Rodriguez, who was without a doubt the guy over Henry Davis coming into the year. That has changed. He's had a pretty subpar statistical season, only 6 homers, 4 stolen bases, hitting .268. The strikeout numbers are under 15%, walk percentage over 10%. It's actually at 11.4. He played first base in the Futures game. I don't know if he's playing that's the interesting thing, is the team wanted him to like be the catcher. He'll probably learn under Hedges. He might play some other spots for this team.
Hedges is the best defensive statistical catcher this year.
Hedges did this with San Diego when he was with them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think the guy's a coach. I remember him when he was with San Diego and they had like Francisco Mejia and he was like taking Mejia under his wing. I think it's like another same thing. Like Andy Rodriguez is coming here.
Why the numbers for Andy Rodriguez weren't amazing in the minors too is what I'd heard is that the real focus was to learn the position.
Yeah. And I've talked about that with like Carson Kelly used to be this hitting prospect. And then he said his 2 years of focus on being a better catcher really kind of decimated. I mean, that's not a good thing now, but it decimated his offensive production and he had to build that back up. You might be seeing that with Indy also while playing some other positions. So I'm not aggressive on Indy. I think
like
it's
him, man.
No, I mean, I like him long term. I don't know if I like him this year.
Love like that BBK profile.
Okay,
like
Indy or Zach Geloff rest of year. Indy or Geloff?
No, we'll make it Soderstrom because it's catchers.
Okay, yeah, Indy or Soderstrom. Which one? Indy.
I'm going
Easy Indy?
Right. No, that's a tough one. And I do want to say that maybe I was a little hard on Geloff and Soderstrom before the weekend. And you can be mad at me if you missed out on him in 5 of Blues, but so did I. They do hit the ball hard, and maybe I'm focusing too much on the strikeout rate, but I just think that the batting average starts at the 220 range, and
Indy's like the opposite player
to make it. Yeah,
that's a good thing. Indy's the opposite of Geloff.
Like 260, 270 with some power and speed, and so I do think the overall package would be worth more.
Exactly,
and go with Soderstrom.
One of the things you do like to look at as well, pretty low ground ball rates for Indy. He's another one of these guys. Only one time ever has he had an over 40% ground ball rate, though. Like he has a higher opposite field percentage than he does pull rate this year. So, I mean, it is an all fields type of guy, which probably is equated to the lack of power last year in AA, 39.8% pull rate with a 29% opposite field. And this year, 38.9 oppo, 37 pull rate. So,
For
you know,
Andy
he's definitely
Rodriguez.
not. Yeah. This is a contact, no strikeout type of hitter. Doesn't steal a dramatic amount of bases, which kind of holds off some of the value. So it's actually very similar to very early on Francisco Mejia. Coming back to that comp when Mejia was first coming up, hopefully a better outcome is what I would hope.
Yeah.
You know, I threw this out here as just one last thing was Fab Weekend came off here and I pulled some numbers for you, not NFBC numbers, but some percentage number changes. I pulled CBS's numbers and I just want to get your take on this. Here were some of the biggest changes as far as players that were picked up and see if you have any takes. Zach Geloff was like the number one player. He went from 3 to 24% on CBS. We also had CJ Abrams, who went from 38 to 56%, Soderstrom 16 to 36, Oswalt Peraza 16 to only 8%. Those were some of the big ones. You obviously
18%.
had a couple of the others in here. Yeah, 16 to 18%. Where would your, if you were ranking these guys, go? Geloff, Abrams, Soderstrom, Peraza, as far as ownership? And I don't know if you were trying to acquire any of the. I think you said you missed on Geloff.
Yeah, I didn't get any of those guys really. CJ Abrams must have heard me talking, man. I still don't like this profile, but as DVR pointed out before he went on his sojourn, he's 22 years old, and so he looks just such like a kid too. If he's filling out, I mean, the barrel rate was 2% last year. It's 5.7 this year. His max EV was 109.6. Now it's 112.5. 112.5 is above average. So now you got a guy who's got above average max EV and average-ish barrel rates. So you put that together with obvious speed. DVR, how can you do this to me? I think DVR
Abrams
is
is
right
fascinating.
again. I think DVR might be right again.
Yeah, there's elite speed in that game. If the quality of contact improves, this is one of those guys that, I mean, I think he can be an upper echelon fantasy player if he shows the ability to be a higher quality contact and, you know, a little bit more power and, you know, some signs of life. And people were picking him up. Now almost 60% owned on that platform.
Still a really
So
bad chase rate for him. That, you know, that he's been improving, of course.
interesting too. I
The
think I
rolling
can,
chase rate is down to 35%, and it's been improving all year.
and I want to say he is 2 years younger than Zach Geloff. He is 22 years old. CJ Abrams is, and I believe Geloff is 24.
And
Let's
he's going
see
to
how
make a
right I
lot
am.
more contact than go off.
They're a year apart. I'm sorry. Abrams is a year younger than Zach Geloff when you're looking at, not that that has anything to do with it, but more in the long-term outlook of CJ Abrams, there's still a lot to be had. Two other quick ones on the pitching front. One of the bigger performances from the weekend, and this was actually something I noted looking over the last 30 days. I want to get your take on him. And then one last here. Only 76% owned on CBS, which on other platforms might be lower. Kyle Bradish went 7 1/3, had 8 strikeouts, gave up only 3 hits. And this is why I brought him up. Over the last 30 days, the number one stuff plus at 132. So I was just curious at your take. Is Bradish a must-own player who borderlines at 76 on, like I said, on CBS might be more like 60% on a lot of other platforms, which means he's still out there.
Yeah, I just wanted to see. Oh, he's pushed his four-seam fastball above 100. I was gonna say, you know, how bad is that fastball, and it's at 101. So
And the
this
best
is
stuff
pretty
plus.
exciting.
Only 3 players in the last 30 days had a 120 or higher stuff plus. It was like Bradish, Strider, and forgive me, I'm forgetting the last one. You know, who McClannon's been hurt. I don't remember who it was, but it was Strider and Bradish is number one, the only one with a 130 plus stuff plus over the last 30 days.
Yeah, I mean, it's really exciting because he's found a way to just use his pitches better. And you know, I think I think he's figured it out. I just hesitate. This is one of those things where I was on the front. I was a front runner on him, and I am excited about him, and I don't want to just be a sad wet sack, but like, it isn't a great fastball still, and so in terms of like, do I like him the rest of this year? Yes. And will he be in my top 30? Probably. Uh, but is he going to be like a top 15? I don't think so. And next year, do I make him like a top 15, even if he ends up, the 15th best this year or something? I don't think so.
Well, if he's your top 30, he's a must own then rest of the season.
Oh yeah. He's definitely a must own.
All right. So the percentages show the last one, only 4% owned on that platform, and had a great outing this weekend. Alec Marsh, 11 strikeouts, 6 innings, a quality start, 16 strikeouts over his last 2 starts. Is there something with Royals Alec Marsh?
Yeah, I don't get it. It's a good slider and a passable four seam and an average curveball. So while his stuff plus isn't really stand out, I wouldn't say that it's terrible. It would be one of the better ones for this Royals squad. And then just looking at the game log, one thing you can see from what he's doing is he's really emphasizing in the last start he emphasized the four seam against the Rays. The Rays aren't a team that loves the high fastball, maybe, other than Paredes. There's a lot of guys there that prefer it lower. And so maybe that was just a gameplay thing. I was talking to Logan Webb once. He had this new slider. He was really excited about it. And I was like, well, last 2 games you threw more changeups than you've thrown all year. And he said, well, that's just because Milwaukee has the #1 swing and miss against changeups. And so it was just a game plan type thing. So, I think that, it is nice to see him trust his fastball and get good results on the fastball. That probably just has something to do with the Rays in that matchup. The Rays do strike out a fair amount. Minnesota, the matchup before that, strikes out a ton. So I think there's a little bit of matchup stuff here. But I think that makes him a good matchups play in going forward,
Decent streamer. If you guys are looking at your pickups here, and there's going to be a lot of other stuff that's going to be materializing here soon with the trade deadline. You're going to have a lot of different open spots. Players going to move into worse. So if you're looking spot streaming and when your trades go away in your leagues, you might want to be paying attention to guys like Alec Marsh in potential streaming spots. That's going to do it for the episode. Go to theathletic.com/rates and barrels, sign up, couple bucks, get you locked into the account. I believe DVR is back tomorrow. Have you heard this rumor? Is that true?
I have seen that on the rundown.
Okay, so I think that's going to be happening. A Project Prospect with the 3 of us. We'll be back together. We'll be probably breaking down the starts of Grayson Rodriguez, Quinn Priester, looking at Strand, and a whole bunch more. I got a guy that I'm going to bring up tomorrow, identified, who completely changed his pitch mix from 2 starts ago to the last start, had huge results in a destination where there is a potential start available in the majors, a spot open in the majors. And I will present this guy to you guys tomorrow and see what you guys think. So make sure you're locked in. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Check out the YouTube and find Eno at Eno Sarris. Find me at Is It The Welsh. And we will talk to you next time right here on Rates and Barrels. Goodbye, friends.
Thanks for listening.